Alright, so I have more highlights that I want to add. Like I want to add them up here on these stones, over here. I'm going to add a highlight on the door. I'm going to add some to the rubble down here. But before I continue doing that, I'll also add some on the stone right over, excuse me, I mean on the wood right in here. So on this side and over on this side. Before I do that though, I want to add the arch that goes right over here. So let's scroll up over here, take a look at the plans. It's time to add this arch. So when I drew this out, I drew it real quick. I think I'm going to make my arch a little bit more even. But in order to do this, I'm actually going to open up a 3D application. I'm going to do this in Maya, but there's no reason you can't do this in Power Animator, Lightwave, 3D Max, XSI, Houdini, whatever you prefer. So the very first thing to do is save out the current PSD image. So we'll take this and we'll save this, but just to kind of help me out, I'm going to hide all the layers that don't deal with that door. So this shows me more what I have to work with and where I can go ahead and place that archway. So I'll take this and I'll do a save of it real quick. Control-Shift-S will do a save for you. Call this, make a temp directory over here. And create arch.psd. All right. Your whichever 3D package you work in, it may or may not allow you to save PSD files or to actually bring PSD files into your package. So I know Lightwave and Maya can. I'm unaware of the others. So to save this as like a flattened Targa or BMP or TIFF, I don't recommend saving this as JPEG. JPEG always has compression on it, even though when it's set to 12 in Photoshop, I'll show you that. It's still got compression on it, and I just prefer not to work that way. So let's see, I can go to File, Save As. So I've got my Create Arch PSD in there. And if I just pick a new file format, like Targa, let me bring this window up a little bit more. Format, Targa. You notice I get this little little thing right here, this little, hey, watch out, buddy. This says file must be saved as a copy with this selection. Now the reason it has to be saved as a copy is if you look over here in the layers, I actually have many layers, and I have layer sets and I have layer effects. And Targa file format does not support this. Something you may have noticed is that right now Photoshop TIFF files do support layers and layer sets, and they also support paths and almost anything that a PSD file supports. But to kind of keep my file size down, I'll just say this is a Targa for right now. Create arch.targa, save. It's asking me, do I want to save 16, 24, 32-bit? Because I don't have an alpha channel, I'll save it as 24-bit. If I did have an alpha channel, I would save it as 32-bit. I'll hit OK. So I've now got my current image, and I'll bring this into my favorite 3D program. And one more thing, right before you do that, come down here and take one more look at the document dimensions. So it's 800 wide by 920 tall. But we'll need to keep that aspect ratio when we're working. Alright, so I'm in Maya. I've got the initial file loaded up. And what I need to do now is I'm going to create, and Maya, for those of you that are familiar with Maya, I'm actually creating a NURBS plane, and I'll be working from there. For those of you that work Maya, I work with Maya. I prefer NURBS for this particular instance because the deformation I'm going to get when I start bending and pulling points will be a nice smooth transition. This could be done in polygons as well, and I would just up my tessellation when I did that. So to start with, kind of elongated it because I know I'm going to have to bend it in half and it's going to come around to these sides, and kind of fatten it up a little bit. Now as I'm doing this, this is not a perfect science, so there'll be some tweaking and whatnot. And also for those of you that work with Maya, I found the quickest way to make an arch is to actually come up to the deform menu, come over here to create nonlinear, and create a bend. Excuse me, create a bend. I'll show this in the perspective window. So having a look at this, my bend deformer is right up here. I will go back to the top menu. So in order to correct that, I'll have to change the rotation of my bend deformer. Now it aligns, that green line now aligns perfectly with with my piece of geometry right here. So go ahead and select the bend, and I'll set the curvature. Okay, so it's bending down. Be cool to make a circular arch. It's not what I'm doing right now. Change the low bound and the high bound. For those of you that work with the low bound and the high bound, you can see it's the end of the start and stop of that green line where it actually takes effect. So as I increase or decrease, it actually changes where it's affecting. Alright. Maybe I'll scale this in a little bit. Scale it up. Bring it in just a little bit more. Now as I scale it in, it's kind of shrinking my geometry there. It's alright. Bring this up just a little bit. Now I want to make sure that I don't get these black little patches in there. So I'm going to bring this down just to right about there. If I want to fatten up this arch a little bit, I'll just scale it down in the Z. Make it a little bit fatter. Alright, so now we've got the arch geometry well placed. Okay, so I'll go ahead and assign the material to the selection now. And I've preloaded a material, or a texture in here that I'll be using as the arch. And it's this right here, this little stone texture right there. So I've got this piece of geometry selected. This is my material. Move these over real quick so you can check this out. Add. Right mouse click, assign material to selection. Oh, let me select something first. There we go. Minimize that. So if we zoom in on this now, we see that we get this really miserable error right in there. So if I go back to the Hypershade window, and again, if you're using a different 3D program, I'm sure you're well versed enough in that program to know how to fix it there. But what's happening right now, for those of you who are working along in Maya, what's happening right now is that I've got my texture, and the problem is that I've got this really miserable tiling. So I'll just open up the Place 2D Texture node. I've got my attribute editor open down here, so I'll bring that into the view real quick. And I'm going to change my repeat U and V. The U direction of this texture is way stretched, so I'll set that to 6. You can see that actually starts to kind of cure some of that stretching and banding in there. And my repeat V, I'll set this to about 0.5. Yeah, something like that. Maybe I'll try 0.4 and see what happens. Oh, that's great. It's excellent. Let's be really daring and try 0.3. Whoa. Alright, I'm not going to touch it anymore. 0.3 is perfect. So again, for those of you working along, I set my repeat U and V to 6 and 0.3. If you have different scale factors on your texture, you may need to set that separately yourself. So I dig it. That looks excellent. We've got a nice clean arch going on there. And the final thing for me to do is I'm just going to render out this top camera. Just going to render that out. For those of you that prefer not to render, what I would do right now is enlarge my Maya window and then do a screen capture. Either way you prefer to do it. If you were going to do a screen capture, turn off, all pieces of geometry and then just show NURB surfaces. Yeah, you can do a screen capture like that. So I'll go ahead and do a screen capture real quick. If you want to do a screen capture of just the window and not your whole desktop, you can do an Alt Print Screen. An Alt Print Screen will capture just the active window. Print Screen captures the entire window, which is very large if you have a double monitor setup. Alright, so we'll just Alt-Tab back to Photoshop. And because I now have, I went ahead with Alt Print Screen, because I now have an image loaded into the clipboard of the OS. If I do a Control-N, you'll see that the preset is set to clipboard, and so it automatically knows the width and the height of the image in the clipboard. So I'll go ahead and hit OK, and now I'll just hit Control V, and voila, there she is. So I'll zoom in on this. C for crop, by the way. So the crop tool is right here. Kind of bring this in. Let's do a quick crop, and then I'll go in a little bit. Oh, looks like I cropped the top off there a little bit too much. Do this one more time. Okay, so here's my new image. Again, with the crop tool, I'll come in here real quick, and I'll just go ahead and take that little top off right there. Oh, let me invert that. Come right down here, and take this little part off right there. Something you may be noticing when you're doing your crop is that it's sticking to the sides. Like it'll snap right there. If you want to turn that off, go over here to View and Snap. So when I uncheck that, I now get a nice smooth transition in there. So now I just need to select this color and remove it. So W, which is the Magic Wand tool, and the Magic Wand tool will just select whatever color you have that you select on. And I have my tolerance set to 0. Contiguous I have that checked, so that means it's not going to select the same color in a different area where it's not touching. However, I want it to, so I will turn that off. And there we go. I've now got this entire gray area selected, which I don't need. So I have the selection, but what I actually need is I need to invert my selection. So if I come up here to select, I can do inverse, or you see it's also Control-Shift-I. So Control-Shift-I, there we go. Now I have my layer 1 selected, so Control-C, minimize this window, come over here, I'll actually turn all this back on. And right here, just for right now, I'll just place my new arch right above the door. Move tool, V, move this right in this place. Beautiful. All right, so obviously one thing that's missing right now is it's not integrated, but the sizing is excellent. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this here. And when I say it's not integrated, like the colors are off, the lighting, everything's flatly lit right now, so that's not a problem. But it's not casting shadows, it's not receiving a highlight, and it's a little. If you have a look, it's a little bit brighter than its environment. So in the next chapter, I'll be fixing that.